red, white, and blue. From the right, I'm Gary Pollock.
And from the left, I'm David Jones.
Tonight we welcome two interesting guests. First, Linda Geffen, Chief of Special Prosecution for the Harris County Attorney's Office. And David, Linda will tell us what that means. And David Michael Ryan, who's an attorney in Houston. And David, we're going to hear about your interesting law practice.
So let's start. You're the government person here. Why don't you tell us what this is all about with your career first, that you are now in a position to be trying to stamp out human trafficking?
As a government person, I work for County Attorney Vince Ryan, and when Vince came into office, he saw a great need to fulfill his mission of neighborhood improvement. And towards that end, he created a special prosecutions unit. We do many things, including fighting for animal rights, against dog fighting, cockfighting. We go against noxious nightclubs. But primarily what we've been focusing on lately, because of the huge need for it, is human trafficking. And we work very closely with law enforcement to help eradicate and close down the businesses that harbor that criminal element. And I've been 10 years with the County Attorney's Office and 10 years with the DA's office before that, so I've been with local government for quite some time.
20-year veteran, Mr. Ryan. That's who your opposition is today. So how did you come into this world of seeing this? I'm sure you're not here to represent an industry.
My story is that I took the oath of citizenship when I was 14 years old to become an American citizen. As a result, I have a little bit more of an affinity and empathy for what the non-native born American or resident of the United States has to go through. As a result, my practice is mainly the immigrant community, although I don't do a lot of immigration work. I do some, but most of what I do is represent immigrants in state court. Criminal cases, divorces, business disputes, purchasing businesses, things of that nature.
This includes prostitution, does it not?
Well, prostitution is a large part of the criminal defense I do. A large segment of my client base is the Asian community. The Asian community makes up less than 10% of the population, but they make up over 50% of the prostitution arrests. Because I'm one of the few attorneys that are willing to fight the prostitution cases in criminal court, and I understand that a prostitution case can get a woman immediately deported, and most other attorneys don't take that into consideration. A lot of them will come to me.
Well, Linda, let's first talk about what the topic is, human trafficking. When I hear of human trafficking, of course, I think of the movie Taken, because I do, because that was a movie about abduction of, in this case, American girls, and put into slavery in Saudi Arabia, was it? What are we really talking about?
Well, I mean, the movie Taken is a bit exaggerated, but human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise, second only to guns and drugs. However, it's soon climbing up because the folks who run the drug cartels find that trafficking is so profitable that they're switching into the buying and selling of humans. Human trafficking is actually the recruitment, the harboring, the obtaining of a human being through force, coercion, duress, or some other means such as that for the purpose of indentured servitude, labor, slavery, or the commercial sex slave industry. It is a huge problem in the United States, globally, in Harris County, $32 billion industry, which is higher than the gross national product of some countries, higher than Walmart's profit, to give you a perspective on the kind of money it brings in. And here in Harris County, to bring it close to home, in Harris County we have approximately 6,000 runaways every year. Within 72 hours, approximately 2,000 of them will be caught up in the commercial sex slave trade. In Harris County is a hub for trafficking, and that's due to geographic reasons, but it's like a perfect storm. We have two major airports, we have a railroad, we have the ship channel, and we have a very porous border. All of those factors conspire to make Harris County not just a hub, but it's a destination city. We actually have training brothels in Houston where women and girls are brought in to be trained in how to use the industry, how to be used in the industry, and they're shipped out to other big cities. The Department of Justice has certified I-10 as a corridor for human trafficking.
So do you basically, what you do in your practice is you go after the people who are behind human trafficking?
Yes, Gary, that's right. We use the power of civil injunctions to target the locations that harbor the criminal element. In other words, they harbor the pimps, they harbor the business person who is giving safe haven to the people who are in control, to the traffickers. So we work with law enforcement. If citizens give us a tip, we'll develop those leads, and we do the investigation to learn about the location and ultimately close that location, work with the nonprofit so that the victim, when the location is closed, have a safe place to fall. The nonprofits like Houston Rescue and Restore, International YMCA.
How effective are these strategies, Mr. Ryan, do you think?
They're not. No one is going to try and say that human trafficking is not a terrible thing. And I've said it before, there's a special place in hell for people that make a living off of buying and selling other human beings. But the problems of human trafficking are multi-dimensional. Going in after a small businessman that you think might be involved in something is not going to solve the problem. In fact, all you're going to do is drive it deeper underground if he's actually involved. The fact of the matter is most of the businesses that get targeted are not involved in that kind of activity. They are simply businesses trying to make a living. If the police did a better job of their investigations, you wouldn't have Houston being a destination city if in fact it is.
So you're saying we're not applying the resources correctly, do you think?
Well, the problem becomes this. They look at the picture and they say, I'm going after this business, I'm going to shut it down, and this is going to cure the problem. It doesn't cure the problem. Part of their strategy, the government strategy, is to try and make as many prostitution cases in one of these businesses as they can. Why not use, for example, the U visa through the Immigration and Naturalization Service, or the Immigration Customs Enforcement Service? The U visa is especially for victims of human trafficking. All they need is somebody from law enforcement to say, this is a victim, and they can have permission to stay. They don't use it. They don't even attempt to do it. In fact, most vice officers I've had to deal with have said, I don't care, I got to get the case first. I need that conviction.
I'm not exactly sure who the you is and the they are that you're referring to, because here in this county, from the federal level all the way down to the local level, in the mid-2000s, our Attorney General, through the latest legislative session back then, mandated a human trafficking report, which mandated a task force. U.S. Attorney's Office does a wonderful job, as does FBI and ICE, coming together along with the Harris County Task Force, which is made up of nonprofits and police officers on the ground. And the locations that I have seen and that we have targeted are thoroughly investigated, thoroughly researched, and we know the criminal history of the business owner and that they have been arrested for, it could be anything from having a location that doesn't have a massage parlor license, which they're required to do. And you have to admit, if you drive down 1960, which is a very large Asian population of spas, one after another, that these are not licensed facilities. The other thing that the government is doing correctly and appropriately is there's a huge movement in the trafficking industry to decriminalize these victims. There are certainly prostitutes out there, and there's certainly victims. Now, the victims, the people who are being trafficked, are these folks who are coming across the border. They're being promised better jobs. They simply want to send money home to their family, to their kids. They get ensnared in trafficking. The first thing that happens, their passport is taken. They're beaten. They're raped. They may be gang raped. They're threatened. Their families are threatened. And then, once they are broken down, they're sent into these brothels, into the massage parlors in 1960, the cantinas in the southeast part of the county, and they are put out in all places of the county, sent out into other locations with law enforcement doing the investigation and targeting not the women, not the girls, but the people who are running them, their pimps.
Who represents the pimps then? Who represents the girls?
I don't know, because if I have represented in 18 years of practice probably 3 people charged with some element of human trafficking. I don't like those people. I charge them a great deal of money to represent them. I've been successful in my representation of them because the great for publicity because there's not a one of us here that is going to sit there and say it's great that these people are being brought here under false pretenses and then forced into something that they had not bargained for. However, the fact is they are not proving these cases. The fact is that they are not getting the cooperation they need because they are not trying to decriminalize it. But 5 years ago, the Harris County District Attorney's Office was willing to make a prostitution charge on a first offense a class C misdemeanor of disorderly conduct. You can't get that anymore. You cannot get a pretrial diversion for a prostitute in Harris County anymore, even if there's a suspicion that she's been human trafficked.
So we're abusing the victim's choice. We're allowing the businesses to lure them across the border, primarily because of our immigration policies, which Gary and your party are responsible for.
No, as a member of Gary's party, I would disagree with some of that.
When you tighten up the border and you make it more difficult for those folks south of the border, and let's not fool ourselves, this is not just Asians that are being forced into this lifestyle. These are people from Mexico and Central America as well. And we're making trafficking very, it's become a very attractive job for the smugglers because of our controlling.
There are African women and
our lack of control of the border. That's why it happens.
There are African women and children being bought and sold within 5 miles of this building. Okay, and it's been going on for years. Law enforcement has done nothing to try and shut it down. Now there have some practical problems for law enforcement, especially in the immigrant communities where they are not trusting of people from the outside. So it's hard for law enforcement to crack that kind of business.
Effective slavery was never abolished. Although we think that in 1865 that slavery was abolished, there are more slaves now globally than there were in the whole 400 years of the African slave trade. It's not just Asians. It's not just Afro-Americans. It's every ethnicity. It's every socioeconomic group. It's in River Oaks. It's in Bel Air. It's labor trafficking. It's the commercial sex slave trade. But I think what we need to really concentrate on distinguishing, we're not talking about prostitution per se. When I'm talking about, especially when I'm talking about human trafficking, there are very willing women who will go and become prostitutes. And I'm glad there are good lawyers like you out there to defend them. I'm talking about representing the victims and making sure that the women and the girls, the underage minors, I had a 14-year-old, and that's not unusual, who get ensnared in this, get out of it as quickly as possible by using all of the governmental agencies in place. It's not a perfect system. If we didn't have such budget constraints, we would have more people on the ground from every agency.
Why don't you do something about the little boys being trafficked in the Montrose?
We do.
No, we don't.
Well, Harris County Juvenile Services does. I can't say we do for every single little boy, but if you have